Evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for this first local nature recovery strategy webinar. Just going to give people a few more minutes, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, just to let people come in, and then we'll make a start. So thank you again. Thank you so much for attending. Hopefully this will be a really good opportunity for you to hear a bit more about the local nature recovery strategy. If you're completely new to this, then a bit more information in the background, what we're planning to do for this. If you came to one of our events as well, that would be maybe a good refresher or a top up of the information we've already given you. And of course, an opportunity to ask any questions as well you have and provide your feedback as well. So I think we're getting to around the level now where of what we were expecting to join. There's a few others just coming in, which I'm admitting. So I think we will make a start. Before we make a start, of course, I just want to say that this session is also recorded as well, which you should have received a notification before you set up. But of course, if you do not wish to be recorded, then you are free to leave the webinar whenever you so desire. So like I said, so I think we'll make a start. So as I said, thank you very much for attending this evening and giving up your good time to hear us and discuss around the LNRS. I think we'll start off. It's very important to start off with some introductions. So I'll crack on. So my name's Alex Cowley. I work for a company called Meeting Place. We've been appointed by the Hertfordshire Nature Recovery Partnership to provide the engagement activities for the local nature recovery strategy for Hertfordshire. Our background, so it's myself, account director, and Jake, who's also on the call here today. He's a senior account director as well, who have been running the engagement activities, which you may or may not have been privy to in the last month or so with the engagement events we've done, and also some of the press releases we've sent out and the online activity. Mark, if I could just maybe hand over to your good self.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Jake. So my name is Mark. I am the project manager for the local nature recovery strategy. I work at Hertfordshire County Council, but I spend most of my time working directly with the new Hertfordshire Nature Recovery Partnership, which I'm going to tell you a lot more about this evening.
Thanks very much, Mark. So before we crack on with the presentation, I think it's always a good idea to do a few of the house rules for a webinar. So as this is a presentation, it will be largely done through a PowerPoint slideshow, which myself and Jake and Mark will be taking you through. We do have a Q&A at the end of the session, which you can answer, which you can provide your comments and your questions in the Q&A section, which is, if you look at the top of your screen, there's the Q&A button at the top there. We have a selection of interactive questions, which you can do throughout the presentation. It's so if you were to click on the Q&A button now, you will see that Jake has rather handily put those questions in. You'll also see the running order of those questions. So, for example, what changes have you noticed to Hertfordshire's natural environment in the last 10 years? We'll be going through these questions. If you can provide comments underneath, you can press that by pressing the little speech button bar, and you can provide comments there, and you can also like if you and react to that as well. And we'll be going through those and sort of talking through the feedback that we receive throughout the presentation.
Yeah, just to say as well, Alex, if people are on web browsers, you might struggle using the Q&A function. Do let us know if you want to drop comments in the chat, and we can kind of pick it up that way as well.
I see. Thanks so much, Jake. Just to also point out that we'll be doing the first one first. So if you want to get your comments in, I'd start from there and work your way down. I can already see some comments starting to come in, which is fantastic. The other thing to note as well in the Q&A function is that if you have any general questions about the LNRS or the engagement we're doing, if you can pop them in the bottom question, which says any questions, and we will cover those off in the Q&A session at the end. So excellent. So I think without any further ado, Mark, if you could share your the presentation, and we can crack on with the webinar.
There you go. Has that come up for anybody?
It has, yes.
It has for us, yes. But I'm sure if it doesn't, then please, if anyone can drop any message in the chat if you have any problems hearing or seeing us. Great.
Right.
Yes. So Mark, yeah, if you could move the slide on. Oh, excellent. We had a react. That's always positive. Thumbs up. Excellent. So as I was saying, welcome to the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. The things we're going to be talking through basically are who are the Hertfordshire Nature Recovery Partnership, what is the LNRS. We're going to talk about some of the pressures on nature and the natural environment currently in Hertfordshire, which I think, as I'm sure all of you will be interested to discuss and to talk through. How you can get involved in the LNRS, which we primarily at this stage providing feedback on what the LNRS is and maybe how you would like to see it being deployed. As I said, finally, we'll have a Q&A session and some next steps as well. So hopefully that provides you an understanding of kind of how we're running the session today. And this will go across 90 minutes. So yeah, those are our aims of what we're planning to do. A point to make from the outset is the best way to provide feedback on the LNRS will be through the feedback form, which is available online. So you can go to our survey, which is on our website, which is www.hertfordshire.gov.uk/nature recovery. Jake, would it be possible for you to maybe put that in the chat so people can click on that? If you'd like to go and do that, that's no problem at all. And if you scroll down to the green section, there are two surveys. The first survey is a general engagement survey, which is for everyone, effectively, to provide comments about the LNRS and what they would like to see it used for. The second survey, and there'll be a second link, will be for land managers in particular. So that's a very specific survey, which if you are a land manager, it'd be great if you could fill that in as well.
You can also scan the QR code there if you've got your iPhones on you, if you want to get your cameras up, and then that'll take you through to the link. But I've just pasted in the chat the link there to the URL.
Thanks so much, Jake. Yeah, that's a very easy, very good way to do it. Yeah, Mark, can you go to the next slide, please? So I think the next slide was in fact going to be, oh no, it is initial thoughts, you're quite right. So I think, let's see if we've had any comments. I think we have had one comment who has said, I think it's regarding scrub and trees and the importance of preserving those.
Yeah, we've also had a comment from Anonymous, extending the greenbelt to include the land beyond the greenbelt between Stortford, Stevenage. I don't think that was in response to a particular question. I don't know if that was a more general point there, but yeah, to add to that.
I think maybe at this stage, you'll just talk maybe about some of the feedback we've received already. I think it might be quite helpful for people, because I know that people obviously have come to our engagement events. And I have to say we had 5 in-person engagement events throughout Hertfordshire in July. It was very well attended. We had over 150 people attend across those different events. We received a lot of feedback, a lot of positive feedback. I think a lot of people are very happy to see that the local nature recovery strategy is coming forward, and also the fact that something's been done from a statutory, as it's a statutory requirement, which Mark will go into a bit more detail in a second. But in general, I think there's a lot of different angles that people want us to take with the LNRS in terms of preserving nature, but also encouraging nature as well, and biodiversity, and and also particular species as well. And a lot of interest in what the LNRS will look like in the future, which I think is quite a key cornerstone of what we'll be doing in the future engagement we'll be doing. And also just kind of understanding a bit more information, which hopefully these sessions will provide a bit more info on. So I think maybe if we move...
We've just had another couple of comments. Sorry, guys. So we've had a comment from Anna there. Less nature around in general, less insect life. Thank you, Anna. Councillor Stuart Withington says more development and increasing industrial agriculture. So thank you for that comment. And I think we've got Sharina counter. Lots more building, lots of loss of trees, beg your pardon, and more littering and fly tipping over the last 10 years as well.
Yeah,
I think, yeah, from this. Sorry, go on, Mark.
Oh, I was just glad to hear that insects got mentioned, because they're easy to miss, but something that did come up at the in-person events in answer to this question was people noticed butterflies in particular. There's a lot less of them around, and grasshoppers.
Yeah,
you just don't see them as much as you used to.
Yeah, so I think we can probably agree from what from the feedback we've had already from this webinar, and also the feedback we received from the other different events and online, is there's something that there are some challenges that are coming forward, and something needs to be done, and that's why the local nature recovery strategy is a good idea to come forward.
Yeah.
Mark, shall we move on to the next slide?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So first of all, I want to talk to you a little bit about the Hertfordshire Nature Recovery Partnership. Oh, I can't believe I got it wrong first time. Or the HNRP, as we call it for short. So this is a new partnership. It's coming up to a year old. And it's been created with the sole focus of creating the local nature recovery strategy in Hertfordshire. So as I mentioned right at the start, the majority of my job role is supporting the partnership to deliver the local nature recovery strategy, or LNRS, and ensuring that the management of the creation of that strategy runs smoothly. It's a very broad partnership. So as I said, I work for Hertfordshire County Council, but we are just one of the cogs in the machine that is the partnership. So there is a wide variety of different organisations involved. I'll talk more about them in a second. In terms of the structure of the partnership, we have a steering group, which is predominantly officers. It focuses on the actual project management and creation of the strategy work, involves technical experts, brings together all the data, all the ecological resource from the different partners, and actually works on delivering the strategy, which we'll tell you more about a bit later on. We also have a board which provides oversight and strategic guidance to the steering group. So that board is made up predominantly of elected members, so councillors, and it is chaired, as well as the partnership overall, being chaired by Councillor Eric Buckmaster, who I know is in the audience here today, effectively ensuring that we are on the right track and the steering group heading in the right direction. As I said, there are loads of different organisations involved in this, so this isn't just a county council effort. Firstly, the other councils within the County of Hertfordshire, so the 10 district and borough councils are a key component of this. We have the Hertfordshire Climate Change and Sustainability Partnership and the Hertfordshire Infrastructure and Planning Partnership. So it's the sustainability and planning functions, if you like, of the district councils brought together in this partnership. So we have a representative from each of those groups that sits within the HNRP, and they provide a link to the key members and officers on the sustainability side and the planning side across the district councils. Central government also have a key role to play in this. So we have colleagues from Natural England, from the Environment Agency, and from Forestry Commission, who all sit within this group as well to provide national data, technical expertise, and effectively a link in with DEFRA. We also have a wide variety of different other organisations. Too many to list here, actually. You can see the full list of partners on the webpage, but there's other businesses, charities and organisations involved, including the Hertfordshire Middlesex Wildlife Trust, sort of the key charity for wildlife within the county. We have a link in with farmers through a landowner liaison officer. We have a link with town and parish councils, local access forum, catchment partnerships who work on projects to restore rivers across the county. So there really is a really sort of comprehensive coverage in terms of who is involved in the partnership. Importantly, though, and if you take away one thing from this slide, and maybe this whole presentation, it's that you don't have to be in the partnership to be able to contribute to the local nature recovery strategy. And that's exactly why we have an event today and why we had events earlier in July, and we'll continue to have some for the rest of the year. You'll notice on that diagram on the right, right at the top there is local groups and people. And you are a key community to feed into the local nature recovery strategy, providing local information to supplement the sort of big data that we're using, technical information that's just not picked up elsewhere, as well as broader views on Hertfordshire, what the local nature recovery strategy should be doing, which is exactly why we're asking you some of the questions we're asking you today. And as I go through this, you'll see different ways you can be involved in contributing to the local nature recovery strategy. Okay, so that's a bit about sort of who we are and who's involved. What actually is a local nature recovery strategy? I could spend the whole hour and a half talking about this, and I'm definitely not. Please don't switch off. But it's worth covering a little bit of what's actually involved in this. So there's quite a lot in the name, right? And I think it's worth picking it apart a little bit. So importantly, the local nature element first. It's a comprehensive nature strategy. It's not just about species. And what I mean by this is we've had biodiversity strategies in Hertfordshire before, and they do good work. They identify how we can help support and maintain species populations and also protect the habitats that support them. What's different about the local nature recovery strategy, however, is it's not just looking at this. That's a key component of it. That's really important. But it's also looking at the wider environment. So as well as protecting habitats, protecting species, and ensuring that they flourish and recover, it's also thinking about wider environmental benefits such as natural flood mitigation and access to green space, air quality and water quality, carbon sequestration, all things that are really important to help ensure that nature is resilient and is recovered. The recovery element is key as well. So in previous years, the methodology, if you like, to thinking about nature is to try and preserve and protect what remains. We know that it's been degraded, but there's pockets of it that are great, and let's try and protect it. This strategy sort of changes that a little bit and shifts the focus more to thinking about expanding habitats, creating new habitats, joining up habitats, making them bigger and better. And that's slightly different. We don't just want to protect what we already know about is important. That's obviously important. We're going to keep doing that, but we want new habitats. We want to grow those habitats and we want to join them up. So we're focusing on recovery. Strategy, that's a bit of a misnomer. I wish it hadn't been called that, to be honest, because I spent a lot of my time trying to convince people that this isn't going to be a boring long document. It is going to be something useful. So I will spend 30 seconds doing that with you now. The aim of what we hope to get out of this is an online tool that is an interactive map, and it will be able to show you where, how, and what we need to deliver in terms of local nature recovery strategy in an intuitive and easy way. We've got a question in the Q&A that you'll see, and we'll get onto it a bit later about what we want it to be, and we want your input on that as well. But don't be scared off by seeing the word strategy and thinking, oh, it's just going to be another dusty document on a shelf. We're keen to make sure it isn't that. So, as you can see from what I said about the broader nature focus, this isn't just going to deliver benefits for wildlife, it could deliver benefits for the broader environment and for residents too, right? Improving access to green space can have a fantastic impact on residents, improving mental well-being, making nice areas for recreation, improving water and air quality. Obviously, we want cleaner air, we want cleaner water. It's also important to note that this is a collaborative strategy. I think I've probably made that point with the last slide, but it is a strategy that's made for Hertfordshire by Hertfordshire. We really do want it to be collaborative. We have a partnership that I said is broad and has a lot of organisations involved in it, but we want broader engagement than that. We want to hear from you about what you want in this strategy, what it should be doing. Hence this meeting and the others. Important point as well is that this is required by law. So it is something that Alex said we think is important and we want to do, but it's also something we have to do. So the Environment Act requires that local nature recovery strategies are delivered across England by every county. They're delivered in slightly different ways across the county, but with across the country, sorry, but within Hertfordshire, it's being delivered by our partnership. And to that end, we are expected to deliver a draft back to DEFRA by March 2025. We won't have it all tied up by March, but we will have a substantial draft that will go to them, and then it will go to a formal statutory public consultation. So as you will see when we talk about it a bit later on and go through the schedule of engagement events, there'll be plenty of opportunities for you to feed into this, but there'll also be a final opportunity next summer to have your say when we consult on the drafted strategy before it's published. Okay, so what will the LNRS do in 2 minutes or less? Effectively, it will try and answer 3 questions about nature recovery, and that's what can we do, how can we do it, sorry, and where can we do it? And in answer to all of these questions, you can provide some input. You can help us to make sure we're answering them correctly, effectively. So in terms of the what, the LNRS will look to identify broad kind of priorities for the county, right? What is it we need to do to help nature recover, big picture? We will be asking about some of these a lot more in the autumn, but a little bit today we'll touch on this. A lot of this work will be at least initially led by some of the technical experts around the county, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as the presentation goes on. How can we do it? This is something you can absolutely input into today. So we may have broad priorities that we want to fulfill as a partnership in the local nature recovery strategy, but how we do them is still a question that needs quite a lot of thinking about. We need to know what projects are already ongoing, what projects are proposed, what opportunities there are out there for projects. So are there, is there funding available? Are there sites available, etc.? That kind of information is not all stored somewhere and we can just go and get it. That's something we need people to tell us about. And so we need you to fill out that survey that Alex mentioned earlier and tell us what you're doing already, what you know is happening in your local area, what you know is planned, that kind of thing.
We've already got some really good responses in that regard, Mark, in the Q&A. So many thanks to people who've come forward. Yeah, definitely save that for the survey as well. But Andy mentioned he belongs to St Mary's Church in Watford. You know, for example, can you help us restore nature in our churchyard? So really interesting. Thanks for that, Andy.
Oh, fantastic.
John Dunlop, how can we assist our farmers to move to regenerative agriculture? We actually had some really interesting conversations in St Albans. There's a group of 26 farmers that are looking to come together to kind of address that and support that. Many thanks for that. Also thanks to Jim. He said the Cotter GCN group. I assume that's Great Crested Newt. You tested my knowledge there, Jim. Is asking for help. It's the biggest colony in Hart and they are proud of it. Thanks for that, Jim. So yeah, already had a few comments in that regard. Yeah.
Thanks, Jake. I'm really glad to hear about churchyards from Andy there. That's definitely something we are thinking about already, as they provide, I think, untapped opportunities for nature, and especially some quite rare species of lichen, which don't really thrive anywhere else. So yeah, love to talk to you more about that, Andy, another time, or maybe there'll be a question in the Q&A. Last point of this slide, the where can we do it? Again, this is something we really need help on. There is a lot of data out there, which we currently have technical experts going through, identifying where the ecologically most opportune areas are for creating more nature or enhancing nature. But we also need people who manage land to say, effectively, I've got a site and I think it could be used for this. And also local knowledge, right? So if you know a site within your local area that either it used to be of value to nature and it's sort of been neglected in the last few years, or you think poses an opportunity for becoming something better than it currently is, exactly like some of those things that were mentioned by Jake there. We really want to hear about it, and please do put that in the survey. There's several questions to try and capture all that information. And if you're a land manager or have any kind of control over land, please do fill out that land manager survey, because it'll ask you a few more detailed questions about the site specific stuff.
I think it's thinking laterally around it as well, isn't it, Mark? We had some really good conversations with Wilderhood Watch when we were in St Albans, you know, some of those groups. There was Wild Jam as well, the kind of network of allotments across St Albans allotment sites. You know, an allotment might be pretty small, but actually taken together as a whole, all of those allotments in the city, you know, there is a lot of kind of land there, isn't there? There's quite a lot of potential as well. So yeah, the kind of breadth of thinking creatively around that as well, and kind of honing some of that local knowledge will be, yeah, very, very appreciated. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's a good point actually about sort of the scale of what we're looking for. You know, an allotment isn't too small to matter on this. We're interested in everything at this stage, and especially, you know, those opportunities in urban areas, they're hard to find. So just because it's a seemingly small opportunity, don't neglect to let us know about it.
Yeah, we sat down with a few councillors at a few of the events, and actually, you know, their local knowledge to say this corner of this road, this kind of grass verge,
right?
And it might be pretty small, but actually, if there's hundreds of those grass verges around the town, you know, it's quite significant, isn't it? So yeah,
definitely. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the context of Hertfordshire. So every few years, the Hertfordshire and Middlesex Wildlife Trust will complete what they call the State of Nature report. And this effectively gives us a bit of an overview. I say a bit of an overview, it's actually a really complex piece of work. It's very detailed. Do have a read of it if you can. It's freely available on the Wildlife Trust's webpage. Really useful, but it sets the context for Hertfordshire and maps recently what's been happening recently with regard to nature. So I just wanted to pull out a few headlines here. Some of you may be very aware of these facts, either because you've read that report or because you've firsthand experienced it. But they assessed 7,500 different species. And between 1970 and 2020, 20% of them are now either extinct or threatened in Hertfordshire, which that's quite a lot. Worrying, I would say. Really speaks to the fact that there is a genuine biodiversity crisis. Some of the specifics here really quite interesting as well. We have so little heathland left in Hertfordshire, which is really interesting. And this point on woodland, that so deforestation is something it's in the media a lot. I'd say it's something that people are pretty aware of is an issue. Even people who aren't particularly tuned into you know, environmental issues, everybody knows we're losing our forests globally and that we need to do something about it. So since 1970, woodland has increased in Hertfordshire. And actually, if you look at the national targets set by central government, we are, I think, almost or pretty much there with meeting that target. But despite that, since 1970, 35% of woodland species has declined. And this really speaks to the need for this kind of strategy. We're losing trees and we need more trees, yes, obviously, but nature is incredibly complex. And in order to be able to tackle these issues, we really need to pull together all our resources and our information to make sure that we have very comprehensive plans for how we can tackle species decline, because it's a really tricky problem. And even with the greatest minds, it still takes a lot of work to be able to tackle this. And lastly, the one on here is chalk streams. So I imagine the vast majority of everybody here will be aware of the importance of chalk streams. It's something that comes up anytime we talk about local nature recovery. Something we're very proud of, I think, in Hertfordshire, that we have 10% of the world's chalk streams, which are a very rare habitat globally. Unfortunately, none of them are in good condition. So it's both an opportunity to do a lot more and something that we can be proud of, that we've got those habitats.
Yeah, that was something mentioned by Raj in the comment there. Biodiversity suffering, especially around our chalk streams in the comment.
Yes. So with that in mind, just want to talk a little bit about pressures on nature. There are loads of different environmental pressures, and as I said when talking about deforestation just then, these kind of problems are really complicated, and it isn't just one thing that causes a problem for nature that we just easily remedy. And this is why we need this kind of strategy. But here are a few of the ones that are perhaps most forefront in our mind, at least. Water quality. So Raj mentioned it there. Our chalk streams, obviously something very important here, and management of woodlands. We just covered that. Impact and pressure on sites for recreational purposes. Not something I've heard yet. Maybe there are some comments about that, but we've got some very valuable sites in Hertfordshire. We have Ashridge Estate, fantastic ancient woodland site, beautiful place to go and spend a Sunday walking, but also because of that, it attracts a lot of people, and that tourism means that it gets degraded. So we have to find a way to help protect that really valuable site, help it recover, but also meet the recreational needs of people who live in Hertfordshire. Obviously, we really want to enjoy it. Housing development, that's already come up. Intensive farming practices, again, already mentioned, and the big one, climate change, which can cause species to either move out of Hertfordshire because the climate is no longer suitable for them, or the habitat that they require simply can't survive in the changing climate or changing weather conditions, so they may migrate typically further north. And similarly, other species moving into Hertfordshire because the habitats which they required no longer are supported wherever they were, and they have to move to a cooler area, for instance. So there are a few that we thought of, but we'd really like to hear what you think the biggest pressures on nature in Hertfordshire. You may think that it's some of the ones I mentioned, and I mean, please do put them in the Q&A if you do think that, but it would be really good to hear some specific examples of if you've experienced any of those firsthand, or if you think there's something that's missing on there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mark. We've already had some good comments on this one. So Liz, many thanks. Liz says more people is one of the biggest pressures on nature in Hertfordshire. John Dunlop, again, housing development, but it also has the opportunities for enhance if done sympathetically. So really, really interesting comment there. Thanks, John. Michael Anker, deer are having a growing impact on LNRS and biodiversity in current and planned schemes. I assume that means the kind of overpopulation of deer there, Michael, but thank you for that. Sharina, again, thanks for your comment. Housing and cars, so very much echoing John's comments there. Anna says overdevelopment. Development's not following through and providing the ongoing green/blue parts of their design before the 10% biodiversity net gain, and any green or blue elements created and not focused on improving biodiversity, but focused on pretty and easy to maintain, basically green and blue deserts there. So thank you for that, Anna. Nick Bowl says too many people and using too many resources and no way to force nature conservation above the desire for growth. Mary Webb said allotments can be great places for biodiversity and wildlife. She flags Wilderhood Watch again. That's the team in St Albans that came to speak to us. So yeah, really interesting group with that. And Mary also said there is a massive need to educate people about the importance of urban spaces such as verges and small patches of grass for increasing species diversity. There is a large neatness brigade who just want a green desert. They cannot see beauty in nature, they just see untidy vegetation. I think that echoes, we've done quite a few campaigns where you try and rewild grass verges, and you do get a lot of complaints about that. Can't please everyone there, but yeah, thanks for the comments there, everyone.
Yes, I was going to say actually on the changes you've noticed in the last 10 years in Hertfordshire, one of the things I've noticed is that our verges are a lot wilder. There's a positive change. It's something that's happening a lot more. Saw it a little bit a few years ago, but they're a lot wilder now, which is great. which is not to say that it's a job done. There's obviously plenty more to do, as was echoed in the comments there.
Absolutely, Mark. I just to add to this, I think a few people have also put some comments in on the chat as well, just to reinforce. If you could put your comments in the Q&A tab, that'd be wonderful. So Jill has said, housing development is a pressure yet urgent need for more housing. So I suppose that's a talk of the balance that we need to strike between providing housing for the future, but also making sure it's done sympathetically. And Andy has said, our farming system is responsible for 70% of water pollution. So again, I think it's again coming down to those pressures of need to take a very holistic approach to what the pressures are, not just sort of focusing maybe necessarily on the areas you might expect, but also to really seemingly sort of dig into the details of all aspects of how we undo the pressures on our environment, it seems. So some really interesting comments coming through, I have to say.
Yeah, so another one here from Raj. Maybe we should ask landowners such as golf courses and schools to also contribute to the biodiversity measures. A really interesting one. I think people often see golf courses as, green oases, but, a lot of the time that's a monoculture of grass, So actually, in terms of biodiversity, is that the best use of space? So thank you for that, Raj. And Jim's also come in with a comment on solar farms as well to say that they're a pressure. So thank you. Yeah, really, really interesting angle to take there.
Yeah, thank you very much. So to move on to something a bit more optimistic, thinking about opportunities. As I said, this is about recovery. So as part of the LNRS process, there's some sites that we need to include effectively. As I said, what we're looking to get out of this, among other things, but the key thing that we're looking to get out is really an interactive map tool. So there are some sites that we need to include in this map tool, and that's because they have some level of protection already, or they are incredibly ecologically valuable. And this is a guidance given to us by DEFRA to include this. So this map here is some preliminary, well, that's a difficult word to say, preliminary mapping completed by the partnership, which shows the designated sites across the county, along with irreplaceable habitat. So ancient woodland, for instance, as I mentioned about Ashridge. What we are hoping is that although these are standard and have to go in, we can identify many other opportunities outside of these sites. So they're the ongoing projects that I mentioned, proposed projects, sites that people either own or know about that could be used to create new habitat, buffer existing habitat, join up existing habitat, whatever. So this, if you like, is our sort of starting position. And all of those white bits of land are potential, I guess, to become opportunities if you can provide information about them. What we are hoping the tool will actually do is you will see something like this, and you'll be able to hover over an area, and you'll be able to see there's an opportunity to, for instance, I want to say tree planting, that's always my go-to, and I need to stop doing that as a default opportunity for the reasons we discussed earlier. Let's say plant a wildflower meadow, and this will support priority 10 that's been identified within the strategy, and these are the specific actions you can take to enable that habitat to flourish. So it will have all those elements of a strategy, but it will be in a user-friendly tool, at least that's the plan, and be really geographically located, making it really easy to use and making it so that you can really see what you can do in your area and see where, all the strategic stuff actually applies to you. As I said, though, this is a bit where we really, really need your help because we need local input. We've got lots of data from across the county from different partners that can feed into this, but we need that local information on sites, projects, etc., to be able to build up those opportunities. So in order to get that information, we want to really ask you what sites and areas are important to you. Where can habitat be created, or where can it be restored? So if you know that there was historically habitat there that could be restored. what's already happening. So that's the ongoing projects bit. Where does nature need the most help? So it might just be that you see a need there, something that's just not being provided for nature. And where is nature already being helped? So that's, again, some of the ongoing projects. It might be that you're a land manager and you're doing plenty for nature on your small holding already, but you're not receiving any kind of funding scheme for it. You're just doing it because that's the way that you farm. And in that case, we wouldn't know anything about it. So unless you tell us, that's going to be something that will be left out of this. And we don't think it should. We want to know that stuff's going on so we can shout about it and say that we are doing a good job in some respects with helping nature recover. So I talked a little bit there about how I thought the LNRS would look and what it would do. Well, what we'd really like to hear is how you think we should implement the LNRS and what you would use it for. So there is guidance on some of the things it must do, but there's also some freedom for the partnership to design something that works for local people and is intuitive and is a useful tool. And so we want to really make the most of that freedom we've got in that area to make sure we make something that people are going to use. And in order to do that, obviously, we need to hear from you about what you want to do rather than us guessing about the kind of thing you'd like. Have you have any responses on that, Jake?
Yeah, a couple of comments there. Thanks, Mark. One from Nick saying, link the remaining decent parts together with each other. Desperate need to make sizable blocks. The odd churchyard and allotment is far too small. Yeah, I agree. The odd churchyard it might be too small, but actually we were speaking to a lot of kind of church groups and kind of bringing that together across Hertfordshire. That is pretty significant in terms of land holdings, and same for allotments. The JAM team in St Albans is doing an excellent job kind of thinking broad brush and holistically around that. So yeah, thanks for the comments, Nick. Sharina,
I think on that one, Jake, I think it's probably worth saying as well, ideally what we want is both, right? We want churches, we want allotments, and we want to join up the habitats into larger blocks. I don't think that's an either or. We need all of it.
Yeah, more the better, yeah. Thanks again to Sharina. So strongly encourage, incentivize developers to genuinely provide climate positive housing. GS8 is a company that has built a fascinating development in Walthamstow, looking at potential development in Three Rivers as well. They seem completely genuine. So yeah, thanks for that, Sharina. You've got a link in there as well for people to take a look. Interesting point, isn't it? I know there's a lot of housing developers that can be, building to net zero kind of standards. Obviously, there's the new BNG net gain commitments to 10% that have been brought in. So yeah, many thanks for the comments there, Sharina. Yeah, do feel free to send some more questions, and you might have to scroll down a little bit in the Q&A chat box just so you can get down to that comment, guys. Yeah.
Just to sort of maybe round off this slide as well is this is going to be an important part of the continuing engagement of this Hertfordshire LNRS strategy. So maybe it's slightly unsurprising we haven't had too many comments on this one. Because people are probably sort of keeping their powder dry insofar as how they would like to see it implemented. And I know that people were saying when we're doing the in-person events, when we did ask this question, they said, well, we'd like a bit more information before we can kind of sort of say how they would use it and deploy it. But I think, so our aim will be in the next few months to provide more detail around what the LNRS is going to look like. And I think Mark's done a very good job so far to explain what their aims are for that. So watch this space, I suppose, is the response I would give on this question.
Thanks, Alex. You said exactly what I wanted to say, but much more eloquently.
I try.
I had a question, a comment from Andy just in the main chat there saying we want to connect our churchyard to all the local gardens and get the owners restoring them and forming corridors in an otherwise nature denuded town centre. So interesting. Thank you for that, Andy.
All right. So coming towards the end of this presentation now, I just wanted to touch on species and habitats. So those of you who are more on the ecological technical expert side of the audience might be thinking, when is he going to get to this? And I'll finally hear species and habitats. This is something we haven't talked about much in any of the engagement we've run so far, and that's predominantly because we are still at the stage now where we're interested in trying to understand which species and habitats close to extinction and really need protection within Hertfordshire. And to that end, we've been working with technical experts across the county, the county recorder network, to really develop a list of species in need of help and the habitats that are required to support them. So we started with a species long list of 1,700, and it's being whittled down to, it's in the mid 40s at the moment. So this is not something that we've talked about much so far, as I said, but this is an ongoing process. And in the autumn, when we have some more engagement events, you will see species and habitats come to the fore a lot more, and we'll be asking a lot more information about your thoughts on species and habitats. However, I should say there are some questions about species and habitats in the survey. If you go on there, we are really interested in to hear if you've cited any rare or endangered species and where, just to ensure that the data that we're using is comprehensive, and there's always surprises. So if you've seen a species, do let us know, and we can sort of cross-check our data and make sure we're all up to date on that.
It's not just animals either, is it? I think, is that plants as well, Mark? Or
oh, absolutely, yeah. So there is an assumption when you're talking about species, people will immediately go to charismatic megafauna, as they're called. So hedgehogs. But yeah, any kind of species. If you're into moss, we've got moss on there as well. And you know about a rare moss species somewhere in the county, let us know. If you know about some fungi, whatever.
Yeah, we had a comment from Andy saying earlier on in the post saying less insect life, birds and bats, not much life in the soil, fewer earthworms, beetles, etc. I think, like you say, people tend to gravitate towards the charismatic animals, like you say, rather than your earthworms, but obviously a critical part of kind of the species and habitats. Yeah.
Yes. Right, so that's the end of my part of the presentation. I'm going to hand over to Alex to take you through these last few slides.
Absolutely, thanks, Mark. Yeah, so just to sort of round everything off before we get into the Q&A section of the webinar, you're probably interested to know what the next steps are in terms of the LNRS engagement work we're doing. So as I said, we've done some in-person events. We're doing the webinar today, and we also have another one next week, same time next week. Which will go through the same information, just again to give people an opportunity to sort of see the background to the LNRS and what we're doing. The next steps really for people on this webinar, and indeed for everyone as well who you might know, who you think might be interested, is just to complete the feedback form on the website. So as we said at the beginning, if you go to www.hertfordshire.gov.uk/nature recovery, you can go and you can fill in the engagement survey. Again, that's in the chat. You can also scan the QR code as well, just at the bottom left there, and that will take you to take you straight there to the website. In terms of kind of the next kind of stages of us putting together the LNRS strategy and the engagement, if you look at the graph or the chart or the timeline rather on the right hand side, you'll see that we're currently in our initial engagement period. So if you see the in-person engagement events and the online webinar series, that's what we're doing right now. Next month in October, we'll be into the second engagement review period, which will be another webinar series we're currently planning, and that will go into a bit more detail about the feedback we've received. So everything that we've heard today, and also the feedback we've received on through the online web page and the in-person events, as well as a bit more detail around what the LNRS strategy is going to look like. By that point, we'll have had a chance to review the feedback and kind of have a bit more detailed information going forward. So another opportunity for you to review that and to look at it and to provide more comments on that as well. And then later on this year, sort of final end point of the year, we have our final engagement review period, which will be again another webinar series. Again, that will be interactive, and that will be demonstrating a proper drafted copy. I believe, Mark, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a proper drafted copy of the LNRS itself, so we can go in a bit more detail there.
Yes, that's what we're hoping for.
Exactly. So in that sense, this is kind of the first stage of a multiple stage opportunity. So even if you maybe go away and think, maybe this is not the time for me to engage, although of course we want you to engage right now, there's multiple opportunities to do so at different points in this whole process. And finally, just to make it very clear, because I think one person did put this in the chat or the Q&A as well, that the deadline to submit your feedback for this initial engagement survey is the 4th of September at 9 AM this year. So if you can put all your comments together by then and send it to us, that would be wonderful. Just move on, next slide.
Q&A. Yeah, so we've had a few questions in already. So yeah, we'll try our best to answer those in the session. If not, yeah, do feel free to drop us an email on the link in the chat. So Anonymous, might be a question for you, Mark. What is the resolution of this mapping? Are we talking getting down to what 3-word squares? So I think what 3-word is 3 meter by 3 meter, if I'm not mistaken. I would imagine that would be too granular, but yeah, defer to you there.
Good question. We are still working it out at the moment. There are some regulatory requirements on us from DEFRA about the resolution. Currently, we have capacity to go down to 1 meter by 1 meter squared, so better than what 3 words. But the question is whether that would actually be useful as a tool, or whether that kind of fine-grained level of data would actually just be too overwhelming to actually be able to make useful decisions. So it would be definitely smaller than 200 by 200 meter squares, because that's what DEFRA want, but probably not as fine-grained as what 3 words.
Julia, thanks for your question. Where is the map identifying opportunities, please? It would help me in identifying any gaps within our parish, which is Weethamstead. Thank you.
Sorry, I missed the start of that, Jake.
Where is the map identifying opportunities, please? From Julia.
Okay. So sorry. The map for identifying opportunities is still under construction. That's effectively what we're asking people to feed into right now. The map I showed in this presentation is a map of designated sites and sites of a very high nature value. That's not a map that's publicly available as yet, but we will be sharing a version of that in the autumn at the next stage of engagement opportunities.
Brilliant. Many thanks to Brian again for your question. This is a collaboration for Herts, but what about cross-county borders, as nature doesn't know about them? I think that's where it kind of ladders up into that national piece, isn't it, Mark, with kind of drawing across is it 37 different LNRS regions? Have I got that right?
You're thinking 47 others, 47, so 48 including us, I believe. Yeah, good question. Actually, that's an oversight on my part. I should have mentioned what we're doing cross-border. So yes, the idea is that we're all sort of doing a piece of the jigsaw puzzle, and then we hand our piece to DEFRA, and sometime next year they piece it all together and we get the National Nature Recovery Network. However, we're not just sort of leaving it to fate and hoping it all lines up. So as project manager for the LNRS in Herts, I regularly meet with all of our neighbouring LNRS project managers as well. There isn't a formalized process for cross-border work, so it is a case of us meeting and chatting through and sharing things, and really just trying to make this work. At the moment, Essex are they're a little bit ahead of us, I'd say. So we can see what they've done, and we'll be taking that into account when we look at opportunities on our border with Essex. And obviously, as our neighbours do the same, we'll do the same with them.
Brilliant. That's great. Just taking a look at some of the other questions that we've got there. Many thanks to Alistair for his question. Is there a resource for allotment associations and churches, etc., to access that can help survey the current biodiversity of their site?
Oh, that is a good question. I don't know is the answer. Definitely not through this project, but I'm not sure if there is outside of this. So maybe that's something I could take away and see if I can get an answer for you.
Thank you. A. Jackson, I have 3 churchyards, 2 of which will be under pressure from new housing plan potentially. any help would be greatly appreciated. I think it underpins the need to get those churchyards, to fill out the survey, really, with that one.
Yeah.
Interesting comment from Jim Eggington, Ardley Parish Council. Where can we do it? We could start with our extensive common land in or owned by our parish. So yeah, really interesting one, Jim. I think parish councils will be key. We heard from quite a few parish councils at the St Albans event, didn't we, Alex?
We did, yeah.
A lot of that land is, commons, like you say, and will be kind of key for nature recovery. So yeah, thank you for that one.
Yeah, please do put that in the survey. So put specific commons if you know the names of them, and also talk to your town and parish councils and urge them to submit the sites through the land manager survey.
Absolutely.
More detail the better, I think, on those particular ones.
Yeah. Another question from Andy. I belong to St Mary's Church, Watford. Can you help us restore nature in our churchyard? So yeah, take part in the survey, Andy, and make sure St Mary's is represented in that regard. Yeah.
I think we've got a section, don't we, Jake, which is in the any questions at the bottom, which has a few questions as well, which
there were a few early on that I just wanted to cover. So yeah, Anna said, what is the deadline for the survey? I think we've covered that, haven't we?
Yeah.
For that question. How will your LNRS connect usefully with those of surrounding counties? Thanks for the question on that, Nick. I think Mark has covered that with the wider group. Julia says, will you be producing how-to guides as a helpful resource / option for good practice sharing? There are many allotments, churchyards, etc. So a case study and ideas may just inspire.
Okay, great suggestion. So I think that's a really useful suggestion to how we're going to implement and what's the LNRS going to look like. So I talked a lot about maps, but effectively the map will be hosted on a web page, and having some specific how-to and case studies, if that's useful, is definitely something that we could look into. That is something we were thinking about for graveyards specifically, is obviously that's been mentioned several times, which is great. I don't think graveyards really came up at the in-person event, so good to see there's so much coverage of them here.
Yeah. Sharina, thanks again for your comment. Sharina says, will you be working with schools to make children and young people aware and engaged? Can be a good way to then kind of get parents engaged as well. We had some really interesting kind of comments from schools at a few of the events. I know there's quite a few initiatives in place already. There's the Green Flag initiative. I think they work with schools to kind of get accreditation in terms of sustainability. But yeah, it'd be good to hear your thoughts on that question from Sharina there, Mark.
Yeah, so schools are something I think will probably be involved in towards the end of this when we're looking at the wider review towards the end of the year. Obviously, there's a lot of them and there's a lot of students at the schools, so we'd be really interested to hear if you had any ideas about how we can involve them and how we can reach them. Because obviously this is quite a technical project. We do really want to encourage children to be involved in this, but at the same time, we want to make sure that there's meaningful opportunities for engagement for them. So yeah, really interested to hear if you've got ideas or contacts or anything that's related to that.
Nick's come back in there. Can you use footpaths and decent management of the margins to link spots together? So that's quite an interesting one, isn't it? The kind of the routes between these areas. It'd be good to hear your thoughts, Mark, in terms of how that might be mapped out.
Yes, I know that some people involved in the Nicky Line and the Coal Green Way, which are disused railways, which are now active travel routes, suggested those sites through the surveys, and we chatted about them at the in-person events. So absolutely, we can use rights of way to link habitats and effectively make them nature corridors as well. But we need people to tell us about them. We have an extensive list of the rights of way network as the county council manages that. But the more people sort of tell us about a single place, the more we can find out about opportunities for what it could be, what it's like right now, and adjacent land, etc.
I think that echoes with Andy's previous question. Andy Roby, thank you for that. He said we want to connect our churchyard to all the local gardens and get the owners restoring them and forming corridors in an otherwise nature denuded town centre. So yeah, that kind of aligns with his earlier comment there. Brenda says, can the strategy encourage reluctant landowners to participate in ecological restoration? Will there be incentives for landowners to participate?
Yeah, okay, good question. And a question that doesn't have an easy answer. There is no power granted with the strategy to force anybody to do anything. The completed local nature recovery strategy, however, will be a material consideration for local planning authorities. That will mean something for the planners among you. I'm not a planner, doesn't mean a whole lot to me, other than it means it will impact local plans and it will impact planning applications. If you're putting forward a planning application and it's in an area that's been identified within the local nature recovery strategy as important for nature, that will impact the decision that the local planning authority make. I realise that wasn't exactly the question, but in terms of the teeth, if you like, that the local nature recovery strategy has, it de-incentivizes the use of areas identified in it for development. Even more so when that links with biodiversity net gain. I won't go into that too much because it's incredibly complicated, but effectively, as Jake, I think you mentioned earlier, recent legislation means that any new developments will have to deliver a biodiversity net gain, so they have to deliver more habitat than they take out through development. And if they deliver it in these areas identified within the local nature recovery strategy as important for nature, they'll effectively get a boost. So they won't have to pay quite as much to deliver the same amount of nature as they would anywhere else. And so that incentivizes the delivery of more habitat creation in these areas that are important, and the de-incentivization of development in these areas, which, if you're a landowner and you own land in that area, might mean that you'd be more inclined to use it for nature as opposed to use it for development.
Good stuff. Good question from George here. Do you receive feedback from mycological societies? Always keen to hear from a fun guy, George. Yeah, always happy to have that. So yeah, I'm sure he's sick of that joke. But yeah, I don't think
we're going to get through this webinar without that joke, Jake. But you've broken that seal, unfortunately.
Yeah, more than happy. I think for the species question, that would be really interesting, wouldn't it? I think, Mark. Yeah.
Yes, actually, mycological societies are a sector that we don't have good coverage on in Hertfordshire. So sorry, I missed the name there. Was it George?
It was George, yeah.
George. George, I don't know if you're involved with any mycological societies. If you are, please do drop an email to our email address, because we'd love to chat to you. They are really the one area of species that we're sort of lacking input on, or lacking substantial input on.
Really interesting question from Alec. How will you deal with duplication, i.e. different people or organisations drawing your attention to the same areas and projects?
It doesn't matter if there's duplication. If lots of people are saying, we know about this project, that's fine. It will get filtered out in the process, and we want to know it's there. We'd rather that 10 people told us about one project than everybody thought somebody else was going to tell us, so we didn't hear about it. In terms of how projects will make their way into the local nature recovery strategy, there'll be a fairly complicated and comprehensive prioritization process, which I probably can't go into here, which will be completed by the Nature Recovery Partnership and led by some of the technical experts focusing on species, habitats, and broader sustainability experts.
Yeah. Raj has come back in to say, are neighbouring areas running to the same timeline?
That would be very good if they were. We are all working to the March deadline to get a draft done, but we all started at slightly different times. mainly due to delays in central government guidance and a lack of clarity around when LRSs need to be completed. Also, we're all working to complete. We have slightly different project plans because although there is guidance on some elements of the LRS, a lot of this, as I said, has been left up to authorities to determine exactly what they want it to be and how they want it to work. So yes and no. You will see actually that some of our neighbours will produce something that they call a local nature recovery strategy, which may look quite different to what we get in Hertfordshire. We've only seen the Essex one so far. As I said, they are a little bit ahead of us. Haven't seen drafts from any of our neighbouring authorities, but I'd be expecting them to come forward soon. So we're sort of all roughly on track, but we might have slightly different outcomes anyway.
Brilliant. Many thanks to Elizabeth for her patience with this one. Hedges are so important in the landscape. Will you be including hedges and encourage hedge vergers to link different areas together? So I think that comes kind of echoes what you were saying around the corridor connections there. And I guess in that regard, Mark, you know, with regards to holloways, greenways, that kind of thing, perhaps whether that will be added to in the map, yeah.
Yes, definitely something that our species task and finish group and habitat task and finish group are looking at. Obviously, hedges play a vital role as a key habitat for species, and also something that farmers can do, right, and be involved in to make their farms more sustainable. So yes, they're absolutely in the mix.
Interesting. If there's been any other questions through, bear with me 1 second.
I think we've had a few further comments in the chat, which might be worth discussing as well.
Yes. Yeah. Do you want to cover those, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. So Andy has put in the comment saying, St Mary's had a little help from the Herts and Middlesex Wildlife Trust for a baseline survey of our graveyard. St John's Primary School Eco Ambassadors helped us with the survey and they loved it. So clearly there's a bit of collaboration, a bit of work. And then I think he goes on to say, we are hosting a climate conference at St Mary's on the 5th of October, all welcome. So there's a plug for Andy's climate conference in our webinar. Would any of you lovely hosts like to come and talk about the strategy? Well, maybe Mark might be worth us considering that in the future for some kind of engagement. Well, I don't know, it's up to we can maybe have a discussion about that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, check diaries and have a chat.
Andy really helpfully has left an Eventbrite link, so we can save that and maybe we can have a look at it. So thanks so much, Andy, for the invitation. Just checking to see if there's any more comments we received. One from Brenda, which says, can the strategy encourage reluctant landowners to participate in ecological restoration? Will there be incentives for landowners to participate? It's a very interesting question, that one.
Yes, I think we broadly covered that off with
the
teeth of the LRS. Yeah. As I said, probably worth reiterating, no, absolutely will not force landowners to do anything, and this is an entirely voluntary exercise for people to put sites forward, and it doesn't in any way designate them or sort of make them unavailable for development. It is all about incentivizing development in certain places and nature in other places, not about restriction.
Just on the point of corridors there, sorry to track back, but Raj has just said we have used linear green space designation to protect these corridors, such as Jersey Lane between Marshallwick and Jersey Farm. Setting up a residents' friends of group has helped tremendously in that regard. So yeah, thanks for that, Raj.
Okay, interesting.
Question from Stuart: Would the LNRS support the plan to join the Flitch Way to Bishop Stortford and Stansted Airport with an active travel/wildlife corridor?
Good question. Probably not my call, but definitely, if you think there's an opportunity for it, by all means, stick it in the survey so that we can see if we can highlight it as part of this. I can see Tracy Dixon asked a question about beehives, but I don't quite understand what you're asking, Tracy. Any sites have added beehives, and if so, how do they set that up? So you're asking if any of the sites that I showed in the map, or any of the sites people have put forward.
Again, that comment, Councillor Matt Fisher has come back and said we're looking to create an apiary in London Colney, and they've received part funding for that. So yeah, I think that was just a question about being interested in potentially installing beehives. So
yeah, beehives are not something, by the way, we have mapped data on. We don't know where beehives are across the county. So if you either have information about that as a sort of a data source, or you want to provide us with some information about specific beehives that are quite important, yeah, please do let us know.
Wonderful. I think we've broadly covered the comments which have come through. I'm just checking our original Q&A questions to see if there's any further ones coming through, but I haven't seen too many more. We have had actually I say that we have had a few more comments in regarding actually how we deploy the LNRS. So maybe we have a quick conversation about that. So, for example, Councillor Stuart Whiffington from Great Dunmow said we need, in regards to how should we implement the LNRS, Councillor Stewart says, think holistically, nature has evolved with intricate interdependencies, some of which are little understood, so need the whole of nature, not just a few species. So I think that's a very important point made. And I think, again, comes back to the point we were discussing, Mark, about the different counties and how people work together and how the different counties can collaborate. So it's quite positive to hear that you are already having those conversations with your equivalents from neighbouring authorities.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point as well about, not focusing just on a few key species. And that harks back to what I was saying right at the start about the change in focus between sort of preservation of what's left and the shift to recovery and creation of new habitats. There will be specific species that are highlighted within the LNRS that require protection, and they may require quite bespoke support and management plans. But it will also look at broader habitat scale maintenance, how we can help restore woodlands, which would support, 10, 20, 50, 100, however many species for a given habitat. So the idea is it does both, right? There will be some key species that we focus that are so important that we really need to protect them just because they're them, but also looking at wider ecosystems and how we can support them on a broad picture.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Interesting question from Emma. She said that there's a slight confusion between LNRS capital S and LNRS lower s, the designated sites. She said, not your fault, I know, but I believe some LNRSs have altered the acronym possibly to reflect that. So yeah, interesting comment there for consideration, Mark.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very important to look at these acronyms and make sure that we're saying, it's very clear what we're discussing. So that's an very interesting point. Also another comment, which is for how you would use the LNRS, also from Emma, maybe the same Emma, I'm not sure. Forgive me, Emma, but I may need to paraphrase your comment slightly because it's a fairly extensive one. Emma says, I think we need a more imaginative approach to urban neighbourhood nature. I'm not sure we should be trying to replicate the wider rural landscape in urban areas. Putting down meadow seed is a prime example. I think this opens a question about whether we are talking nature diversity or species preservation, habitat slash habitat. Neighbourhood nature can be excellent for invertebrates and other environmental function and can engage people, but a combination of food, ornamental and native plant species need to be accepted as beneficial. Yeah. The key is complexity and structure. I'm experienced within three broad forums: health, conservation and horticulture. The three need to come together more. And then she has put an example in of what she's discussing. So quite an interesting in-depth comment there regarding LNRS and the difference between urban and neighbourhood and in nature, I see.
Yes, really interesting to hear that. So one of the, as part of the species work, we're looking at identifying key habitat types as well. One of the habitat types, which is currently on the shortlist, so it's a bit of a sneak peek, I guess, of what we'll be talking about in autumn, even though it's not really a habitat in the same way the others are, it's urban. So we do want to think about urban centres sort of distinctly from the wider landscape. And I think Emma's sort of hit the nail on the head there. And that is what the partnership will be thinking about running up to that autumn engagement section, when we'll be talking more about that, and we'll be seeking more specific input on sort of, how do we maintain a nature-rich urban area.
Thanks, Mark. I can also confirm it is the same Emma who asked the previous question as well, so she's on fire at the moment with the questions.
Oh, we've got a brilliant question here, guys. When are we getting beavers? That's anonymous. That's what anonymous wants to know. When are we getting beavers?
I'm surprised it took this long. I mean, great question. Yeah.
Or
yeah.
wolves.
I mean, I don't know. They are in London, so they're nearby. Yeah, I can't answer it.
Sorry, Matt, you've said you've raised a comment about utilising the service of CMS there. I can't find that comment. If you could add that back in, I'll review it and then we can raise that. Apologies, Matt. I think that's been lost in the messages there. Oh, John Dunlop wants bison, apparently. So thanks for that, John. Yeah.
Maybe the next LNS we need to do a poll about what animals people would like to see.
A non-native species, though, John. So we can't be doing. So.
Are we 100% sure, Jake? Maybe maybe bison did roam the plains of Hertfordshire at some point in the past.
Depends how far back you look. Yeah.
We might need to do an archaeological survey on that one, a paleontological survey even.
Yeah.
Maybe just. I think we're coming towards the end of the questions, and all of them have been actually fantastic. I think just the final one that I actually received an email from someone before who unfortunately said they couldn't attend. The question they had was whether or not this recording is going to be available to people to watch if they're not attending. I suppose my response to that is that, Mark, we need to discuss whether or not we can make this available publicly.
We also had a further question. I can't remember who it was from, just asking about the questions that we've asked and the kind of answers from the audience. So I think we need a discussion about GDPR.
Yeah.
So sharing those names externally. But yeah, thanks.
I think that in response to that question, I would say that would be covered probably by if we provide the recording from this, so people can, because obviously the answers to those questions will be in that recording. So, but we'll need to have a discussion with that, I think, Mark. And obviously, if we do release it, we will update everyone who signed up for the webinars when and if they're available.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I think we're coming towards the end of our time today. I think we're out of questions as well, as I sort of check down.
Yeah, Matt just came back just around utilising the services of CMS, and that's Countryside Management Services. We're super helpful in assisting in rewilding projects. Yeah, thank you for that, Matt.
Amazing.
Yes, do stick your link in the chat, Matt. So those of you who don't know, that's a service provided by the County Council, who develop management plans and carry out management works on sites all around the county, both for private and public landowners.
Tell you what, I'm just looking through the Q&A coming through. We've really set up a debate about what animals need to come to return. John Dunlop said, okay, then wolves and lynx. So clearly John likes to live dangerously. That's what I can gather from those comments. Anonymous.
Woolly mammoth.
Yeah, the woolly mammoth. I mean, absolutely.
Oh, I'm glad mammoth made it.
Yeah,
that's my hope.
Yeah, the woolly mammoth. We'll just need to find some DNA for that one. But yeah, so maybe just to sort of, and I think we have had a few more comments, and Councillor Matt Fisher's come in and said, will the LRS be able to collaborate with agencies / grants, work parties, etc., to assist in local community projects? Maybe Mark, hand that one over to yourself.
Yeah, good question. So currently the partnership is focusing purely on the creation of a local nature recovery strategy. That's sort of our mission statement. That's why we exist and why we were formed. Obviously, once the LRS is completed and published, there will be a massive amount of work to actually deliver against those priorities. So currently, we don't have a plan for sort of us as a partnership and how we will do that. Part of the delivery of the LNRS will be by pretty much anybody that wants to get involved. It's an enabling tool, really, so it's not just for the partnership to sort of create it and then start working on the projects. The idea is that if you want to get involved in the projects, you can. If you want to fund the projects as a business or another organization, you can. But it is something that we are keen to do. I think we really would like to be involved in the delivery, but there's obviously plenty to work out about how exactly that would work as an organization and the structure of it and how we can get involved. So there'll be conversations we'll be having probably from the new year onwards, when we have the bulk of the design of the LNRS at least drafted.
Jim's just come back in with another question here to say, did you say you have no powers that affect landowners? I think we covered that previously, but if you could reiterate that, that would be good. Thanks, Mark.
Yes, there's no compulsory purchase order powers or any additional powers like that granted to the partnership or any of the affiliated bodies because of the LNRS.
Great stuff. I think I can see people are starting to drop off, so I think maybe it's good, maybe a moment just to sort of reiterate the point about just sort of sum up really, and maybe try again some next steps. So yeah, so as we've discussed, we're still very much in the initial engagement period of the of this LNRS engagement period. We're going to go away now for the next few weeks and continue to collate the feedback received. As I said, the feedback is deadline is for the 4th September, 9 AM. So please go online, as Mark's rather helpfully put up the email address, our email address, but our website there, and you can go and do the engagement survey there. Everything I think we've discussed today is very relevant to what we want to hear. So please do provide your comments, and also please do share among any of your friends, colleagues, anyone you think is relevant. And we're very keen to hear from everybody across the spectrum of the community, whether it's politicians, whether or not it's community groups, whether it's just members of the public who are just interested and passionate about nature. 100% want to hear about that. Appreciate we've tried to do as many of the comments as questions as possible, but if you do have any further comments or questions that just appear when you think about what we're discussing, maybe later on this evening, then or tomorrow or the weekend, then please do contact us. Our email is localnaturerecovery@hertfordshire.gov.uk. You should have received the contact details should be, I think, in the Eventbrite link, which you would have received for the ticket anyway, but that's also on the website as well. So plenty of opportunities to engage with us. And yes, so I think as a final sum up, as we're literally getting the warning saying 5 minutes left in the meeting, thank you so much for everyone for attending. I really appreciate everyone's comments as usual. Really, really good to hear from people who are interested and are clearly very clued in about the future of the natural environment in Hertfordshire. It's been really, really helpful, and hopefully we'll continue those conversations with people and have more information around the LNRS very, very soon for you. So yes, if you could please do the feedback, and please do get those comments, keep on coming. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you in autumn.
Speak soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.